Hi, and welcome to Nancy talking about real estate. So, I decided to do some videos about some of the most frequently asked questions that I have. So, this one, we're going to kick it off with how to start investing in real estate, and it's 2025. So, as I go through these somewhat short videos, I'm going to be just kind of focusing on one element of real estate investing. So, this first one, how to start, and then after this, I want you to click along and go to my next video, which is how to buy real estate with little or no money down. And then we have another one coming up about analyzing a rental property. So I'm trying to take you through the steps that I learned and that I'm teaching my daughter now. So without further ado, let me share my screen and let's get rocking and a rolling here. So I have to say, guys, when I've done these videos in the past, I have talked about, oh, I'm not very tech friendly or whatever, but I want you to know that I'm becoming more tech friendly every day, or at least somewhat knowledgeable about tech. I've been diving into the AI, and in fact, we have a newsletter that we started this year along with our podcast, and just really getting out a lot of information. But one of the things we decided to add into our newsletter is we're doing I wouldn't call it a dump, but it's about the AI technology that I have been able to incorporate in my real estate investing business. So as I said before, this video is how to start real estate investing in 2025. So what if I told you that most people never buy even one investment property? Not because they lack resources like money, where to find them, but because they don't have someone to guide them through what is real versus the hype. So on our website, we have like FAQs, and I've done webinars on Mythbusters. So there's a lot of like misinformation, and there's almost everything you need is on the internet about how to invest in real estate. What isn't there is how to put it all together. So hopefully these series of videos that I'm doing will give you some guidance that way. So here's my promise to you that after this video, you will know where to focus first, avoid common pitfalls of real estate investing, and how to find deals. So I'm going to share my journey, how I got started, what I ended up with, my criteria, my risks, and how I find deals. I'm going to give you some statistics on investors who fail. And I don't want you to get scared or freaked out because there's a reason that they failed, right? And we're going to talk about that. And then 3 real things that you can do this week to get started. And I don't really say, okay, 1, 2, 3, but what I say is like, okay, here you can do this, here you can do that. So, and at the end, you'll have an ability to send me an email if you have any questions. So who am I? Well, I'm Nancy Wallace-Lobbs. I've been investing since 2006. I specialize in single family homes. I used to own a property management company. And myself and my daughter, Kelsey Laka, that beautiful lady right there, we founded Money Making Mamas. We have a podcast under the same name. It's found on Spotify and YouTube and Apple, all the places that you can listen to podcasts. I'm an author, and our mission for Money Making Mamas is to help moms invest in real estate and make money. So Kelsey's story is that she had a corporate job. Now she has my 2 grandbabies, who are the sweetest babies ever. But she needed a choice about how to make money and replace her income that her and her family had grown accustomed to. Their lifestyle was built on 2 family incomes. So what I'm actually sharing with you is exactly how I taught my daughter how to invest in real estate. So in the early days, I have to say that I was overwhelmed by all the different strategies. I mean, there was flipping, there was this, there was that. I don't even know if Airbnbs came on my radar at that time, but I was just overwhelmed, like just different strategies and how to find properties and, flipping, buying and hold, wholesale, owner finance. All these terms were just, because I've always been interested in real estate. And I watched a lot of HGTV before I got going in real estate investing. And I was like, oh man, if I could do that. And so I was lucky to find a mentor that I trusted. And she told me the skinny about the risk and reward and showed me step by step how it works. And that's my goal for you, is to show you how it works, how to find deals, what makes a deal. And we focused on one strategy, and that was buying hold the single family rentals. So the first thing that she said to me was, here, she handed me this book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, and she said, come back when you finish this book. And I read that book in a day and a half, and I was right back in her office. And this book to this day is still my Bible for buying investment properties. So where I got my criteria of 3-bedroom, 2-bath, corner lots, no pool, square footage, all of that, I got from Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Investor book. It's an older book, but you know what? Everything that he talks about in that book is still relevant today. So if you don't have one, go out and get one, right? So that's a good start for anybody who's looking to get into real estate. So the steps to my learning was, after I read Gary's book, I said, okay, I want to get the 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Now, the reason I picked that and the criteria you see up here is that I wanted rentals that I could rent all day long, that wouldn't be affected by market trends, that wouldn't be affected by job loss or people moving, that, I wanted to have a property, if you will, that I could rent, that I could keep my vacancy rates very, very low. So a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet or bigger, but usually I don't go more than 1,800. And the reason for that is the bigger the property, the more the repairs cost. But if you get too much smaller, I mean, you can imagine, because I'm thinking about the people that are going to be renting my property, right? In those days, 1978 and newer, I wanted properties to be 1978, the year built. Now I'm kind of like 1984, 1985, 2000. The newer, the better, because I did that back then because of the lead-based paint, because if anything over 1978, I didn't have to worry about that when I rented it out. I like corner lots because what I always learned, that is, when I have a rental, one of the reasons I never was a big fan, and I personally never got into a lot of multifamily rentals, was because I didn't want to have to deal with, tenant A and tenant B not getting along, right? So corner lots, and people love corner lots. Why? A little bit more privacy, right? And no pool. I don't like rentals with pools. There's just more liability, more maintenance, more everything. So my steps to learning, all right? So first I had to research the market. I needed to know what the average sales price were, what the average rental comps were, and days on market. So at that time, of course, it was a little bit, the prices were a lot less than they are today. But what I needed to know is, I picked an area that I wanted to have rentals in. Now, she was kind of instrumental in kind of pointing me to the area, because she already was an investor. So I focused my search in the same area that she did. And then she took me out to properties. I set a search up. I'm a real estate broker now. Back then I wasn't even an agent then. And so what I did is, she set me up on a search. So I said, okay, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, no pool in this zip code, or 2 or 3 zip codes. And then every day I would get a list of properties, and then I could arrange to go see them. And she kind of held, she held my hand until I bought that first property. So, but I became knowledgeable about that area because I ended up buying more properties in the same area. So within 30 days, I had put my first deal under contract, and here it is. This is my first 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You can tell it's a corner lot. And I rented that, and I owned that property for over 11 years, and I had the same tenant. And that tenant and that property tripled in value from the time I bought it to the time I ended up selling that property, because I wanted some newer properties and like invest the money elsewhere. But that was the best property, and I learned that simple technique of 3-bedroom, 2-bath, stay within your budget. At the time, this house I bought for like $120,000, I think. But when it came to my second property, I still had doubt and fear. And I can remember, as I'm telling this story, that pit in my stomach the first time that I went and looked at a property. And I didn't know, and it was only because I had a trusted mentor that kind of assured me that I was doing the right thing. But I had a reality check. So many new real estate or real estate investors fail because they lack education, they skip the proper market and property research, or they try to do it alone, right? You can, but why would you, right? So having a trusted mentor, and it doesn't have to be a paid person. It can be a paid person, but it doesn't have to be. Um, she wasn't a paid person. She was just someone that I was genuinely interested in real estate, and she like kind of took me under her wing, and I was very fortunate and feel very grateful for that. There are common costly mistakes that new investors make: underestimating expenses, repairs, ongoing maintenance, vacancy, buying emotional. I have a story for you later. I'm going to tell you. And just not having a strategy, just willy nilly, I'm going to go buy a property, when you kind of had to think about it as a business. And I didn't have a business plan, but I did have a one sheet buy criteria. So I had already said I was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but also at that time I had a price point because I had already gone to a lender and looked at, and if you watched my other video, you know my first property that I paid, that one right there, I got with Countrywide Home Loans. So at that time, back in that day, I didn't really have to worry too much about where the money was coming from. So what does this mean for you? Well, it's not about avoiding failure, but it's increasing your odds by having the right support, being realistic, and doing the work, right? So how do you find a mentor that you can trust? Well, this trusted guide helps by helping you avoid repeating the same mistakes over and over, and it shortens your learning curve, right? It shortens your learning curve. So what to look for in a mentor? Well, transparency. So I have had other mentors over the years for other things, and what I look for is like, are they giving me the skinny? That's what I like to call it. Are they cutting through the BS? I'm a very direct person, and when I coach and mentor people, I'm the same way. I don't sugarcoat it. I let you know. And if you bring me a property and I run the numbers, it's very analytical. I'm not going to say, yeah, this is a good deal when in fact it's not. Or have you thought about this? So experience, someone who has walked the walk, right? Every day I see on social media this person, and I personally might know them, or maybe I don't know them, and they've been in the business for a couple years, right? They haven't even been through one market turn. So length of experience, and kind of like what I talk about in my next video, how to buy properties with, hardly any money down. And then the one after that is about analyzing it. So make sure you click there. But one of the things is like, who is running the numbers, right? If you don't know how, and is the person that's giving you the numbers meaning, is it a good deal, that kind of thing. So, who's running the numbers? I always ask that question. And then how to find a mentor. Well, go to local real estate meetings. I mean, there's a bunch of us out there, right? Online investing groups. Just be careful. What I say about online investing groups, especially ones on Facebook, is just, join and then just watch. Join and watch and observe. And then you can kind of pick up from just the interactions on the comments and things like that, who really seems to know their stuff and who's like, okay, are they using AI to generate that comment or whatever. And then referrals, that's how I got my mentor. The lady that sold us our house when we first moved here, I said, hey, I want to buy an investment property. Who do you know that can help me? And she just told me this name, this person's name. And so I met with her. Now I had a hard time having her take me on because I didn't have any experience or whatever. And I had to do some stuff. I literally went to work for her to make sure that, she was going to, I had to give back. Okay. It wasn't like she just took me under her wing because she thought I was a nice gal. I had to kind of pay my dues, if you will. And then there's coaching relationships. So when I coach people, I don't coach people in multifamily, but I know great people who do. Private money lenders. I know people that teach just how to become a private money lender. I do know how to do that, but I'm not an expert, so I'd want to put you in touch with that. So same with people who invest in single family. So you want to find someone who's been in the biz, that knows what they're doing, and then also has a background in, well, once you get the property, then what? So right now we're just talking about, getting the property. So let's talk, I'm going to shift a little bit. So let's talk about where to find deals, because I think that's probably the number one question I get asked. Well, where do you find these deals, Nancy? Where are they? And you know what? This is the deals are everywhere. You just have to know where to look and what makes a deal. So there's all kinds of properties for sale out there, on the internet, drive your neighborhood. But what makes a deal is, can you make money and can you buy it right? Because when you in real estate investing, the way you make money is on the buy, right? That's, you just have to buy it right. So there's the MLS. Now that's the multiple listing service. So as I said, I'm a realtor, so I have access to that. If you're not a realtor, then partner with a realtor who can set you up on a search, right? And, say, okay, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in this zip code. Can you send me all the properties that become available? So you can work with a realtor that way. I also have a resource that I can go in and do what I like to call them heat maps, right? So I like to go into areas, because my buying criteria is I want properties that are valued between 250 to maybe 300. That's kind of going, and I want to know where can I buy those properties without having to, go through a bunch of searches on the MLS. So I can go to this heat map and I can type in, okay, I want 3-bedroom, 2-bath in this zip code, and I can get a heat map so I know exactly what area to target for what my personal investing goals are. Then there's off-market resources. If you watched my video on I did one. I don't. The name is escaping me, but I did another one, and it's talking about where to find deals like off-market, on-market, that kind of stuff. So off-market resources are your network, wholesalers, driving for dollars. You can also use list services. I partner with a couple list services. My specialty is pre-probate, so I'm getting leads from people who recently passed away, and I have another whole video about that. And then understanding your markets. And I can't stress this enough about location, location, location. Some of the deals that I've gotten, I've been able to jump on them simply because I knew in a particular area that if I got this house under contract for X dollars, that I was getting a good deal. Because, for example, I bought a property a few years, actually it was in 2018. I'm not sure if it's this video or another one that I talk about it, but the owner called me off of marketing and we hit it off. We're talking about football or whatever. And turns out the house that he had, I knew the exact area and I knew how much houses were going for in that neighborhood. So I said to him, well, what are you thinking that you want to get? And he said a number. And I was like, okay, done. Because I knew even if it needed repairs, I was getting it at such a discount that I sent him a contract that night and we executed it via DocuSign. So because I knew the area, I knew that I could rent it right away. I knew what the days of market, and that's, what we do teach is how to know that information, like at the top of your, at your fingertips. So in one of our freebies, the Millionaire Mama Jumpstart that we have, there's actually, we talk about how you can get this information and just, spending 10, 15 minutes a day, going through certain steps so that you become familiar with that information, I guess. And then you have to learn how to calculate the numbers. So comps, so that's like the comps are comparable parties. What parties? We're having a party. Comparable properties. What are they selling for? So a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, built 1978, no pool. What's the average price for that, right? The ARV after repair value. So after it's all fixed up, what's the top price that you could sell that property for? What are the repair estimates? Cash flow analyst, what that is just saying, okay, if you rent it for X and you have, a mortgage and you have pest control or whatever expenses, property taxes, insurance, what's the dollar amount left over? That's your cash flow. And then are you going to need any reserves? So sometimes it's good to have reserves because what happens if the tenant, you have to evict them or something like that. So let's talk about some of the common misconceptions or fears around real estate investing. And a lot of times I just call this myth busters because I think, and I can relate to how people feel, because when I know it's hard to believe, so many years ago that I actually was super scared about and fearful of buying a real estate investment property. I knew in my head that this was a way to build wealth for my family, right? Because that was my ultimate goal. But my heart and my stomach were going red flags, and because I was getting out of my comfort zone. So a lot of times when we have opportunities, and it could be, job changes or a move, or, our children are, going from first grade to second grade, things that challenge us make us feel uncomfortable. And sometimes we have to just lean into what is it about the discomfort that we're feeling. So fear is that's probably the number one reason why people don't move forward. I have coached people for years, and what I see happening is people, no matter how much I hold their hand, some people just cannot pull the trigger because they're just too fearful. And I get that because I too was fearful. And so that's why we try to just break it down simple. Part of the reason I'm doing these videos is to give you confidence to move forward. And what we like to do is minimize risk with due diligence, because if you emotionally take the emotion out of it and you run it like a business and you run numbers, just because you want to get a deal, but the numbers, like right now in the market that I'm in, it's tough to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home for $250,000 or less. It is. But in the secondary markets, like 90 miles, 90 minutes to 2 hours outside of where I live, then there's deals all day long. So you just have to know where to go. And sometimes it means shifting. Like, yes, I would love to invest, down the street from where I live, but it's just not realistic. So now I have to have a mind shift. Okay, where can I go to invest? Another misconception is that you need a ton of money. In fact, the next video that you're going to click on is how to buy real estate with little to no money down, right? So that you don't have to always have 20% down or $50,000. You start small, and there's all different kinds of ways that I'm going to share with you that you can buy real estate. That you'll fail. Well, many people do, and that's not to scare you, but many, many people succeed when they start with realistic goals and get a trusted mentor. And I just like to say that I get it, and I was there, and I didn't know, and I watched all those HGTV shows, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to flip, blah, blah, blah. Well, after I read Gary Keller's book, I was like, oh, no, I don't want to flip. That's not what I want to do. And so I have flipped properties, but that's not my main strategy. So what can a trusted mentor help you? Okay, well, it can help you avoid becoming a statistics. So I did the research, and so 87 to 90% of new property investors fail in their first year. 95% make a costly mistake in their first 2 years. And some of those common reasons for failure include emotional decision making, lack of time and proper business skills, because you do have to have some sort of organization and negotiation skills, because you have to be able to talk right to sellers to negotiate a price or negotiate with contractors. Inability to analyze deals effectively, just because you don't know where to get the information. So common mistakes that derail new investors is you under budget for expenses, like property taxes, which can be a killer, and insurance. Insurance can be a killer. So now what I do when I find a property, because the insurance companies are just going, I don't know, I guess because of all the hurricanes and fires and whatnot, the prices are outrageous. So what I do now when I have a property under contract, the very first thing I do is I start shopping insurance, because I need to know if I'm going to afford this. I have actually sold properties because the property taxes and insurance just got too high. I couldn't make it cash flow. Not untitles, that's supposed to be utilities. And so utilities, because you have to turn the utilities on, right? And so I just saw kind of a heartbreaking story of someone who bought a house from a wholesaler. They didn't do their due diligence, and come to find out there was a lien on the property, and they had to come up with a lot of money to turn on the utilities. So, I mean, there's ways to get around that, but that's not what you want to hear after you close on the property. And then they skip the due diligence. They don't have professional inspections. They don't have a trusted contractor. And the 5 biggest things that'll derail any rehab project is having to replace the roof, the AC and heating, the plumbing, foundation, and electrical. So I had a house under contract a few years ago, and under, like I said, I tried to get the insurance squared away, and I had a good price for the house. I was ready to move forward. Well, then I found out that the seller and the roof didn't need to be replaced. So the seller had filed a claim on the roof and taken the proceeds and spent the money and not fixed the roof. Well, guess what? Now the roof is uninsurable, and it's not like you can make the seller. And it was at that time the cost of the new roof was around $8,000. So that meant that either she had to come down on her price of $8,000, or I was going to have to come out of pocket 7 or 8,000. So her, me needing a new roof didn't fit into my repair budget that I had at buying this property. So we ended up terminating that because she wouldn't come down, and so she ended up selling it to another investor that paid her more money. So she that's kind of like, I don't know if you call that fraud, but that's what happened. She took the money. So you do have to kind of check sometimes. And then the other things that I have done, so I have bought properties where the roof needed to be replaced. So I worked with the seller. The seller filed the insurance while we were in the process of closing on the deal. And then we had it written in the contract that the proceeds would be paid to the title company, so that at closing, then I got the money to fix the roof. So that's how we handled that. So there's different ways to handle it. You want to treat your investing, I said like a hobby, but no. No, that's why they fail. I'm sorry. I was like, what, reading that? They treat their real estate investing as a hobby, not like a business. And they neglect location analysis and skipping detailed numbers and just the market research. So, it goes back to the numbers. So I'm going to tell you a story before we get to the takeaways. So I had some investor friends that I knew that they purchased a property, and they asked me to come and look at the property. And they had already purchased the property. So they bought the biggest house in the neighborhood. And long story short, this is actually in my video. I go into a little bit more detail. But long story short, they were unfamiliar with the order of repairs, and it cost them a lot of money. They also, kind of overestimated and over repaired the property, if you will. So, and they ended up losing money. And the reason they did that is because they didn't take the time to really research. And so when I asked them, I said, well, why did you buy this property? And they said, we just wanted to get in the game, because they were just excited about getting in the game. Well, it's not a game, it's real money, and you can have real losses. So this is what I'm saying to you, doing your due diligence. So research, read books, talk to someone that you trust. So this is my belief on the takeaways. So beginners are not at an advantage if they start with honesty, structure, and real support. So, honestly, what is your limitations? Do you have the time to manage a rehab, right? And then as far as structuring, I'm talking about your time. How organized are you? Because you do have to be consistent. And then do you have support, like from your family, from, a trusted mentor, someone that's going to give you the skinny, if you will. I think being transparent about what you can achieve in early deals helps to, one, set realistic expectations and avoids burnout. So I have met people who, in fact, I had a guy in our coaching program, and I finally just said, after a couple of weeks, I was like, this isn't going to work. Why? Because his expectation was that he was going to make, with my help, he was going to make $400,000 in 1 year, in 12 months. And I said, okay, if I could do that, I would be doing that, right? So that's not realistic. And I said, you know what? That's not a realistic expectation. And then the other thing is, they had an investment property that they kept, turning over. And I said, okay, well, what we need to do is kind of analyze this and see, turning over, and meaning that they'd get a tenant in, then tenant after 2-3 months stop paying, move out. And they kept having that pattern for about 6 months. So I said, well, I tell you what I need for you to do is just, let's talk in a couple days. Let's get a strategy or whatever. Well, by the time we talked next, he had already rented the property to somebody else. So you know what? You have to be able to listen to the mentor that has the experience. So that person went on to do other things, right? So, and then lastly, I want to leave you with this. It's okay to feel nervous. That's just part of the growth, right? So it's okay to feel nervous, have a little fear, but remember, you can control that by doing your due diligence. So if you have questions, reach out to Nancy at moneymakingmamas.com. You can also book a call with me by just doing that QR code there. If you want to just have a little consult, I'm always available. And then that's supposed to be my Instagram handle there. It's at Money Making Mamas. So thank you so much for listening in. And, go to my next video. It's about how to buy real estate with little to no money down. And I think you'll find that very eye-opening as well. So take care. Thanks much and see you soon.